In this video, I'm going to be riding two of my Honda SS100 V Twins, talk a little bit about how I made them and do a bit of maintenance. I've made three Honda SS100 V Twins. The first one I made in 1999 and that bike's currently on display at the Barber Vintage Motorcycle Museum in Birmingham, Alabama, USA. The second bike I made for entry into Salon Privé Concorde Elegance in 2012 and the third bike I made in 2016. I haven't ridden the third bike very much, only covering 40 miles since 2016, so I thought I'd give it a bit of a check over. So the first thing I want to do is check the strainer in the oil filter pickup to make sure it's clear of debris. I use one of Tracy's old cooking trays. They're perfect for putting underneath the bike for collecting oil, so the next thing I need to do is remove the oil drain plug. I loosen the sump bolt using my 17mm ratchet spanner, draining the oil into a separate plastic pot. As the oil flows out, I notice it is still red, like it's hardly been used, which is a good sign. While the oil is draining, I look at the sump bolt washer. This is made of copper and goes hard when it's squashed, so what you do is you anneal it to make it go all soft so it makes a good seal. And the easiest way to do this is to run some cold water in a cup, then use your MAP gas blowtorch, heat the copper washer up red hot, then drop it in the water. This will anneal it all soft. Tracy's out doing shopping at the moment to get some ingredients for some chocolate brownies, so it's idle time to nip into the kitchen. I noticed Charlie Weaver's popped out into the sun. He's been drinking all day. I don't know where he puts it. Anyway, the copper washer is now all really soft. It's back onto the bolt, and I can do that up into the engine straight away so I don't forget. The last thing you want to do is drive down the road and your sump bolt comes undone because you forgot to do it up. With the sump bolt tight, the next thing I'm going to do is remove the exhaust system, take off the kickstart and the footrests, and then loosen the screws and remove the clutch cover. I've got to be careful not to make too much noise, because behind that pile of wood, in the hedgehog house, there's a hedgehog sleeping, and we don't want to disturb him, because he needs to save his energy for his nighttime activities. Both the silencers are held on by the swinging arm spindle, so I loosen the nut and withdraw the spindle. Then I remove the kickstart lever. And finally, I loosen and remove the two bolts that secure the manifold to the engine. And then very carefully remove the exhaust from the bike. The next thing I need to do is remove the clutch cable. This is an easy thing to do. It just lifts out the clutch casing and unhooks from the clutch operating lever. The footrests bolt directly to the engine with 4 bolts up underneath, so I lean under and loosen them. Using the image on the screen on my phone to see what I'm doing. With the footrest removed, I can finally get to the clutch cover, so I use my JIS screwdriver to loosen all the screws and then gently pull it away from the engine. With the cover off, I notice that the gasket looks to be in perfect condition, and I think I'll reuse that. So I grab a bit of cloth and give the engine a little wipe round to remove the oil drips. I look round, there's a right commotion over at the birdhouse. Tracy's come out to feed them. It's their midday feed. They get fed in the morning, midday and in the evening, and sometimes they get an afternoon feed as well. They scoff the lot. It's really nice to encourage the birds into your garden. You get the same ones back every day and you get to know them. With the engine casing cleaned, the next thing I'm going to do is retrieve strainer from the oil pump suction point, which is just here, and it gently pulls out with some pliers. And there's a little bit of mess on there, not too much, but I'll give that a clean off with some of my brake cleaner. It doesn't take much, and it comes up like brand new. With the oil strainer all cleaned, I slide it back into its slot in the engine and then give one final wipe of the engine casings ready to replace the cover. I'll replace the gasket, locating it onto its two raised dowels. Then I replace the spring-loaded plunger into the centre of the clutch. This is really important because it directs oil to the crankshaft and big end. With the clutch casing wiped down, I place it carefully over the kickstart shaft, being careful not to damage the seal, then locate it on the two location dowels and push it home tight. Then replace all the screws, tightening them up with my JIS screwdriver. The JIS screwdriver fits perfectly with the Japanese standard screws and doesn't damage them. Then I replace the clutch cable, engaging it with the lever and lifting it up against the spring and clipping it into the casing. Double check with the clutch lever that it works, and there should also be a tiny bit of free play, and that's just perfect. I then replace the kickstart, tightening the screw up tight. It's now safe to remove the old cooking tray, so I lean the bike over to the left, wipe the centre stand with a bit of tissue so I don't want to make a mess on the patio, and then rest the bike down. So now we can refit the footrests. Followed by the exhaust pipe. It just slips into place. Tighten the two screws at the top, then replace the swing and arm spindle. The next thing I need to do is replace the oil, so I first remove the dipstick, then using some new silk clean oil. It comes in an environmentally friendly container where the outside's cardboard, the inside's like a plastic bag containing the oil. You can just lift it out, so you can take it to your recycling centre and get rid of it. With the box all ready for use and the spout I've pulled up through the top, I can remove the cap and then just use it like an ordinary oil can using a funnel and pour in the oil. It only takes 700 millilitres, so it doesn't take very long. I check the level with the dipstick and it's just perfect. So now it's all ready to ride. But before we do that, let's have a quick look around the bikes and I'll explain a few of the features and how I made a few of the parts. I'm going to be riding two Honda SS100s today. This is the third one I made in 2016. It's only done 40 miles, so I'm going to have to be a bit careful with this one and take it really slow because it's still running in. But the second one, which is made in 2012, I've done nearly 600 miles, so we can give that a right thrash. The engine's a 99cc 90-degree V Twin based on a Honda SS100 single-cylinder engine, where I put an extra cylinder on the top. The crankshaft is made up from standard Honda 50 crankshaft parts, just rebalanced, and here you can see it with its pistons in my hand. I made this crankshaft in a previous video. In this photo you can see the cam chain with its new guide pulley and tensioner pulley, and the cam chain goes around the crankshaft and both camshafts in one continuous length. The inlet manifold for the rear carburettor is part of the frame, and the engine pivots back onto a rubber stub during assembly. And here you can see it in its dry mock-up stage. You can clearly see the join where the rubber sleeve will be. To retain the strength of the frame, I had to add these additional struts at the rear, from the rear shock down to the swing and arm pivot, and then put an internal web and also plate the inside of the frame. You can see here in an early construction photograph how much I had to remove. The second bike has a larger hump on the rear seat. This is to hold a 12-volt battery for the electrics, whereas the third bike has a smaller hump with a small 6-volt battery. The front wheel, brake and forks are all standard with the exception of slightly stiffer damping oil, and they work great. The petrol tank's original and holds about 1.1 gallons, but you can get nearly 100 miles on the tank. I could smell a nice smell coming from the house. I think Tracy must be cooking again. Let's go and see what she's making. Well, I rush inside and I notice she's got chocolate cooking in the pan and the book's open to American brownies. So the chocolate's now melting nicely, and then she's going to add some nuts. She first adds the nuts to the sugar and stirs it up, then pours the mix into the chocolate and continues stirring. She adds a bit of flour, sieving it through the sieve to make sure there's no lumps, then a little drop of baking powder and a tiny bit of salt to follow. Then she adds 2 eggs that have been pre-broken into a cup so you've got no shell, and stirs the lot up. Quick consult with the book to make sure nothing's missing, and then the whole lot goes into the baking tray and in the oven for 30 minutes. The book goes back on the bookshelf with all my motorcycle books. With the chocolate brownies cooking nicely, I go out for a ride. I've got 30 minutes, so I'll take out the slower bike first, the one I'm running in, the one that's only done 40 miles, and then we'll come back and take out the other one that we can ride much faster. Back already. I didn't go too far because I was excited to ride the other one, because the other one runs so nicely and it's actually quite fast, which gives a massive impression of speed even though you're only doing 40, and that's what it's all about, small motorcycle riding. They're great fun. second bike goes so well, I can rev it flat out. It does 50 in third, and it'll do over 60 in top if you actually let it wind up. But for now, 55 is good enough. It's a lovely day, so I'm out on a little cruise around. And the other bike, once it's run in, should go just as good. Well, I just got back from my ride and Tracy's made me a cup of tea and also some of the brownie. It's freshly out the oven. It is so nice. Highly recommend it. Anyway, hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to subscribe.